Hi everyone, I am Ben Truska. I am an ancient historian and archaeologist who specializes in ancient Greek arms and armor, and today I will be analyzing and evaluating the arms and armor from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which came out in 2018, one of my favorite video games of all time. Fantastic story and beautiful setting, and today I'm going to epically destroy it. Okay, so the first one I'm going to be looking at in this game is the Spartan polemark. Polemark comes from the ancient Greek word polemarchos, which means the war leader. You know, we have multiple words for the war leader. For instance, out of Greek, we have strategos, which means general. So polemarch, strategos, basically the same thing. It's your head honcho of the army. So looking at this one, he's wearing a linothorax chest piece. He's wearing a supposed Corinthian helmet with a transverse crest. And so now I'm going to break it down. So the first and foremost thing what I really do love is, the undergarment, his chiton or kitoniskos. It's a nice, beautiful red color. It looks really good trim. So I do love that. But the things that I'm not the most particularly fond of is in the game, it's called the Spartan waistband. So up front, you see his double layered pteryges, which is ancient Greek for feathers. So these pteryges, they're not very long. So that higher layer that you see here on the camera, that would be where most of them would probably stop around. You just cover just below the groin. Maybe it's the image, and I just can't quite tell how low it's going, but it's usually it's pretty short. What I do like is the scaling on the linothorax. So this guy clearly has wealth. He's like I said, he's a polemarch, so he has wealth. And so on his linen torso style armor, he's had stitching of scales on it. What I don't like is, even though this is a tube and yoke style armor, if you look on the back side, you see the epimedes or the shoulder straps just connect, just like that. Like you can take them off, the whole thing off. Whereas an actual tube and yoke style, the yoke does kind of cover the upper back. So it's the upper back that has the actual shoulder straps onto it, not just pure shoulder straps by themselves. So that's a little inaccurate. And the biggest thing that I'm going to notice with every single piece of armor that we evaluate today are the arm guards. Arm guards in ancient Greek history were a thing, yes, but only for a short period of time during the Archaic period. You're looking at the 6th century, near the end of the 7th into the first half or so of the 6th century. It's about a 75-year period in which they do that, and even then they're very rare. But on top of which, a lot of times when you see them, it's only on the right side. So it's not both arms that have the arm guards, but it's just the right side. And you'll have a lower arm cannon and an upper arm cannon. And the reason being is, think of it like this. You have a giant shield in your left hand. Why do you need armor over here? So if you're in formation and you're up there with your spear, you got your lower arm covered and your upper arm covered. And like I said, we see this starting to die out because throughout the Archaic period, the phalanx, it goes from a looser formation to a more tighter one. So you don't need as much coverage of armor. So it dies out, especially during the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC. So that is inaccurate. Now, the Corinthian helmet is also highly inaccurate. I do love the fluting on the helmet and the designs. It makes it look very cool. I love how big the horsehair crest is. It might be just a little much. Nevertheless, though, I still like it. It looks great. But the Corinthian helmet, it's very much a fantasy style. Typically, whenever you look at a Corinthian helmet, the eyes are a little bit more rounder. By this point in period, the actual Corinthian helmet has more or less not died out, but it's hardly ever used in the 420s and stuff like that. Typically by circa 450 BC, the Corinthian helmet becomes obsolete. You're looking at the Pelos style helmet, which is a conical helmet that just sits on top of your head, or you're looking at maybe even the Chalcidian, which you'll have chin straps that are on hinges. Not always, some of them are just regular plain ones, but the Corinthian isn't as common. And this one, like I said, cool look, not accurate. So if I was to give the Spartan polemark a score out of 10, I'd give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Okay, so our next soldier that we're going to epically rip apart is the Athenian strategos. Again, very cool design. I actually I really love this soldier. Looking at him, you can actually see he has thigh guards and he has upper arm guards, which is great. It's beautiful because those existed and it looks pretty accurate to the pieces that we have, the excellent pieces that we have. However, it's about 100 and so years too late. Again, really cool concept. I like how the game developers incorporated that into the game, but he wouldn't have them. He wouldn't be using them. Let's look at his torso. So he is wearing I want to say muscle cuirass. He's wearing what looks more like the hybrid of a muscle cuirass and a bell cuirass, which is really cool because, the bell cuirass is the predecessor of the muscle cuirass. Why I said it looks like a hybrid is because you can see he has pectoral muscles and you can see the development of the abdomen, but it's not in full detail, so it's a bit of a hybrid. That being said, the hybrid period of this style of armor, you're looking at circa 480 BC. So this would be something more akin to what Leonidas and the Battle of Thermopylae, Plataea, those kind of hoplites during that time. This is what they would most likely be wearing, or similar variation, not in 420s. It's beautiful in design. I mean, I absolutely love the color and the design and the way it fits on them. Is just, again, this guy, if you put him back in, say, 550 BC, he'd probably fit right in. Maybe not necessarily with the shoulder straps, but we'll get to that. But other than that, he looks great. I do take issue with the epimedes again. It's not necessary. Now, there are, in, say, later classical periods, so when you're looking in the 4th century, we do see epimedes start appearing on metal cuirasses. Cuirasses? Plural of cuirass. You do see them appear on them, and that's fine, but this is just a little too early for that. And additionally, you even have like terrages on the epimedes. That's more of like a Hellenistic going into a Roman period time. So that is way after the time period that this soldier is fighting in. We're looking at his helmet, and it also looks kind of like a hybrid between a Chalcidian helmet and a Corinthian helmet. Now, the Corinthian helmet came first, and the Chalcidian was modeled after it. But the reason why I say it looks like a hybrid between the two is because he has a wide open mouth. I mean, you can see his whole face essentially, but it looks like it's in the shape of a Corinthian helmet. But the way it's opened up, it should be a Chalcidian. It should probably be a little bit more rounded on the cheeks as opposed to like the angular cut. If you look at his horsehair crest, he's just doing a regular horsehair crest front to back. I think it looks great. I like the multiple colors. So yeah, I mean, this guy, he looks great, but he looks more akin to a 6th century hoplite minus the shoulders. Okay, so the Athenian Strategos, if he was in the 6th century, I'd give him like a 8 or 9 out of 10. I mean, that'd be great. And 420s, classical Greece, 4. And real quick, in the game, I like how they definitely differentiate between Athens and Sparta by the colors, which is great. In all actuality, though, on the battlefield, there might not have been as much of a difference, say, when it comes to the color scheme or levels of armor equipment. Okay, so our next contestant. Here we have Alexios in the Athenian war hero. It's a beautiful armor set. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. I love the shade of blue. I love the little shawl that goes over his shoulders. I mean, it's the detail again. The game developers, if anybody's watching this, kudos to you. It's a beautiful game. Absolutely loved it. And I get, this is a fantasy game. You had to do some things here and there. Now, looking at it, let's break it down. The hood. Why are you going to wear a hood to battle? I mean, that doesn't offer any protection. But let's look further into the armor. So again, we see now a Lenothorax style armor, tube and yoke. There's a lot going on with this tube and yoke. It looks like there's a lot of bronze, like filament, I guess you could say. Not necessarily fluting, but filament that's on the actual linen. We see on Alexios's left arm, he has like a little brace, arm wrap, something like that. I just decoration. I don't see any actual why it would help him out at all. I see a little bit of a leather piece sticking out. Now, as for like the cloak and the shawl that goes over his head, or not necessarily on the head, but over his shoulder and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, we can possibly say that's somewhat accurate. For instance, if you look at the chlamys, which is the cloak that a lot of Greeks wore. They wouldn't necessarily wear it in battle. The style of it is not accurate because it's way too short for an actual cloak, but I can see it as a plausible thing for like if you're just walking around, you just want something to cover yourself. Sure. I don't necessarily think I would wear it over my armor. The Athenian war hero. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1. It's just this is not accurate. I don't know what this is. Again, really cool design, far from anything accurate. So the main title screen where Alexios is in his mercenary armor. So this is the cover screen for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. In it we see Alexios with a spear and the spear of Leonidas, standing. Looks like he's getting ready to fight some Athenians. I mean, I'm just going to be part of my language, but that's a badass looking image right there. I mean, this is a really cool picture, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to look at his arms and armor, right? I don't know what this is. I mean, this is a hodgepodge of let's look at some Hellenistic stuff and, oh, this guy's a mercenary, so maybe not all of his stuff matches or whatever. And then let's get something that looks Greek, but isn't actually accurate. So I'm just going to go from top down on this one. So looking at his helmet, I love how they incorporate, the little lambda, which in this game is kind of is a nod to the symbol of the assassins. So it's a little bit of a nod there, which is cool. But if anybody knows anything about the lambda device, not saying that this is one that's specifically meant for Sparta, but typically when we think of the lambda, we do think of Sparta. So if it was supposed to be a Spartan like homage, it'd be a little inaccurate because we don't have any true evidence that suggests that the lambda, for instance, on the shield was actually used by Spartan hoplites. If anything, it could have been used by the Helots or the Helotes who fought for Sparta as like, oh, I am owned by these guys. There's some debate about it, but we don't really see that as a accurate portrayal of genuine Spartans. That being said, let's look at the rest of the helmet. I do like how I can't tell if it's an eagle or if it might be even a griffin on his helmet crest. I think that's awesome. I mean, we see a lot of Corinthian helmets, for instance, or even other helmets, but typically Corinthian helmet, they'll have like a griffin or a boar or a swan or something. I mean, you see a lot of animal figures on top of a horsehair crest. So that's really cool. I do like that a lot. Moving down, he's got a very short cloak or, garment covering him, I guess to keep the sun off, keep him cooler. That's fine. But again, a chlamys is more for just if you're walking around, or you're sitting at a campfire, stuff like that, not necessarily for battle. What I do like though is if you look underneath the red striped cloth sash he got underneath his waistband, if you look at his thighs, you actually see white. And that I think is great. If you're just somebody who's not the most wealthy individual, just a common everyday person, the style of linen that you'd be wearing it could have been very well been undyed. So it would have been like a white or a tan or even a grayish color style of linen. So I do like that attention to detail. So just as having this natural shade of color for his chitin for somebody that you could assume is not very wealthy, which is actually funny because mercenaries a lot of them were incredibly wealthy. Anyway, I digress. If it's somebody who's not super wealthy, this color of chitin would be a very common color. So I think that's great. Again, wearing arm bracers, not a thing at this time. Cool fantasy design, but it wouldn't be something I would consider accurate. Now let's look at his leg armor. So I haven't really touched up on leg armor. A lot of them previously looked pretty good because they were anatomical leg greaves, which is great. This one, I don't like how they did the mismatch set. Because again, if somebody's a mercenary, they're usually getting paid pretty good money. So they'd be able to afford actual, standardized greaves as opposed to the mixed match. So I guess you could say that maybe he was like, oh, he's on the battlefield and he just took, greaves lying on the ground or off a dead body or something like that. Sure, but then at the same time, why not just get a set? Because they're always going to be in sets. It's not going to be, or a pair rather. It's not going to be just one individual versus another. So I don't know. I didn't really care for that design. The one on his right leg is also inaccurate. That is a style of leg greave that you would see in the 6th century. Leg greaves started off, they weren't always anatomical. That's, if you look at Jarvis' style of, I think it's like 4 different styles of greaves. Style 1, which is what this looks like, it's a shorter greave, a little bit more square in shape, mainly just covers the front. And then as time goes on until you get to say like the end of the 6th century going into the 5th, then you have your anatomical greave that'll actually cover the kneecap like you see on his left leg. Yeah. So his left leg has the anatomical, right leg is a little anachronistic because that's going to be more of a 7th and 6th century style of leg armor. I'm going to give it a 2.5. All right, regular Spartan hoplite. Okay, so if this is 480s, circa 480s BC Spartan hoplite, I'd give this a 9.5. The Corinthian is just a little bit too wide in the mouth. There is a type of Corinthian helmet that does have a wider mouth during this time period, but it's not that wide. So that and the bracers are the only things that I'm really taking off on points. So like I said, 9.5. Okay, so this is the armor of Agamemnon. I do love this style of armor because if you look at his left shoulder, you'll see the gold mask of Agamemnon. So Heinrich Schliemann, whenever he excavated Mycenae in the Argolid, he found these graves, and on them were these golden masks. And he genuinely thought, when he found this golden mask, that this was the actual body of Agamemnon from the Iliad and the Odyssey. So the developers adding that mask into the armor, I think that's really cool. This is not at all Mycenaean style armor. There's just way too much. You would actually look at the Denja armor, and you would have more of a boar tusk helmet instead of this Roman centurion style helmet, which again, I wouldn't even consider that a Roman centurion. This is very much fantasy. The wolves on the bracers are cool, but wouldn't be wearing bracers. The greaves also look like they have golden masks on them. Would not be a thing. Not saying the greaves can't have faces. In fact, a lot of them have like animals and stuff like that, which is cool. But for a Mycenaean style armor, this is not a thing. So that it's a very neat homage to like archaeological excavations and a design that's trying to shy away from classical period arms and armor. But this is not accurate for Mycenaeans nor classical period. Can I give negative points for this? I mean, it's a cool looking armor. Don't get me wrong. I love the armor. But if you're looking at classical Greece, this is like a -2. So this one is probably by far the best style of armor that actually represents what a hoplite could have looked like back in ancient Greece, especially during the classical period. You have a linen armor, linen torso armor, so an orthorax. You see the tube and yoke, which is great. You have a single layer of tergates that are actually kind of shorter, so they're not super long. You know, they stop at the upper thigh. He doesn't have greaves. This gentleman, he doesn't have bracers either, but this gentleman's not wearing greaves. He just has leg wraps, which is accurate, perfectly acceptable. So he's not very wealthy, as you can see by the faded color of blue on his armor. His helmet is an Illyrian style helmet. He has a little bit of a nasal piece, or like a brow guard, I guess, if you want to call it that. You don't really see that in Illyrian style helmets. You do see the double ridges, which usually you could put like a crest in between, but the ridges help make the helmet a little stronger. I can see how far it flares out in the back. You know, it's fine. I don't know. Overall, the Illyrian looks pretty good. Not the most accurate in the world, but it looks pretty good. He has some cloth wrapped around his arm for some reason. Not sure why, but it's okay. I'm sure some people, maybe he has a cut or something. He's just trying to keep it covered up. That's okay. Overall, this is probably the most accurate portrayal of a hoplite soldier during the Peloponnesian War. This one is by far, like I said, my favorite armor of hoplite. I'm just going to go ahead and give this one a perfect 10. I mean, this is beautifully done. And, you know, it's a simple things. It's a regular everyday troops that don't have the most glorified armor and stuff that makes it accurate. So this, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.